Between the blood on her hands and the beer on her cloak, it was shaping up to be a horrible evening. "Bitch!" the man snarled as he clutched his nose. The blood seeping between his fingers added to the steady drip of beer that flowed off the bar, left there by his shattered mug. Aya merely dragged her palms down the leather of her pants, a frown creasing her brow as she took in the stains of red on her hands. Tova would never let her hear the end of this. Her friend was always commenting on Aya's ability to come back to the quarter covered in someone else's bodily fluids and smelling like she'd bathed in a pig's trough. But she was never truly surprised. Aya, as the Queen's third, had certainly seen her fair share of blood. The Queen's eyes, they called her. Gianna's Spymaster. "Touch me again and I'll break something you hold far more dear," Aya crooned to the man. She was no stranger to the mess of the Squall, having tracked the men there 3 times in the last 2 weeks alone. But the drunk, handsy patron had snapped the ever-shortening leash she kept on her temper. No one had even batted an eye when she struck him. The Squall attracted the worst of Dunmeaden and its visitors, gamblers and brawlers and thieves. Apparently, Aya fit right in. The man stormed off, still swearing, and Aya shot the barkeep a coy smile. He'd been eyeing her all night. Every night she'd been here, actually. He ambled over now, his broad frame gobbling up what little light flickered behind the bar. "Nice form," he said with a smirk. He rubbed a hand over his hairless head, his biceps rippling with the movement. All Zelu, those blessed with superior strength, were practically walking giants. This one had the ego to match. "I'll have to charge you for the glass, though." Aya unfastened her cloak and tossed it onto the stool next to her as she leaned a hip against the bar. "Perhaps I could find another way to make it up to you." His eyes lit at the suggestion, his thick forearms bracing on the counter. "I know how to throw a punch too, you know. Have I told you about the time I took on 2 anime with my bare hands?" She'd heard the story twice. He loved to brag about his days as a ring fighter. The first time he'd shared it, Aya had hardly been able to keep from rolling her eyes. While the anime used their life and death affinity to serve mostly as healers, they could be lethal. A simple touch of their hand and one's pulse could be lowered in seconds. Even a Zelu like the Keep couldn't stand against them. She was fairly certain anime were banned from ring fights anyway. Aya leaned in closer, willing her face into rapt interest as he launched into the tale again. She smiled blandly and twirled her dark brown hair around her finger as the Keep droned on, his arms gesturing wildly. Carefully, she let her affinity flow from her. No shield. Excellent. "How did a strong fighter like you end up in a place like this anyway?" she asked as she took a sip of her beer. His gaze followed the path of her tongue as she licked the foam from her lips. He shrugged. "It's not all bad. I'm management, you know." Aya forced her eyes wide. "Are you really? So is that your office you keep sneaking back to then?" She nodded toward the guarded back hall to the left of the bar. She knew full well a shithole like this didn't have an office. But she let her hand dance across the sliver of space between them, her fingers tracing the Corpsoma tattoo on his wrist, a circle with a line through the middle. "Perhaps we could go there. Seems more private." The Keep shook his head. "Not my office." He paused and looked around. "I really shouldn't say, but..." She pushed her affinity harder, and the man continued, oblivious to how she persuaded the information from his mind and mouth.